The views and opinions expressed in The Fact Is with Hollis Grant are those of Hollis Grant and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Droids Canada Network. Droids Canada Network does not take responsibility for any content or position produced by Hollis Grant and his show. Listener discretion is advised.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant, and today we're going to be talking about the trucker convoy, the protest, Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau. We're also going to be talking about some fantastic sound clips that Justin Trudeau has had over the years and how hypocritical the Prime Minister of Canada is. With the recent developments at the trucker protests that developed in Ottawa. And if you've listened to our show, again, you can go back to droidscanada.com, go back to our prior episodes, past episodes, and listen to what we've had to say about those protests. But the recent developments over the last week have led to border crossings being blocked, mainly the Windsor-Detroit corridor, which is the main artery for supplying goods back and forth across the U.S.-Canada border. Now, what's interesting in this particular announcement, now this is the announcement where Justin Trudeau suspended all civil liberties, enacted the War Measures Act, a first of its kind. The first time it was introduced since 1988 in its revamping, the Emergency Act. Now here's what he had to say, and this is a very interesting clip, and it's talking about foreign money. So here is good old Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Whiteface talking about foreign money.
This morning I had a direct call with President Biden to talk about our shared challenges at the border. I updated him on the situation, particularly in Windsor. We discussed the American and indeed global influences on the protest. We talked about the U.S.-based flooding of the 911 phone lines in Ottawa, the presence of U.S. citizens in the blockades, and the impact of foreign money to fund this illegal activity.
Now, he talked about foreign money funding an illegal activity. Now, the money going into the protesters sitting in Ottawa, just sitting on a street, sitting in their trucks, is different than what's happening at the borders, restricting movement of goods to and from the countries. But when we're talking about sitting down, a peaceful protest, I might add, a peaceful protest, that he doesn't like foreign money. Now, the government has since stopped, prevented, and gave the banks the ability to freeze accounts of truckers, of people that are supplying money and giving money to charity. But when we talk about that one particular thing that he said about foreign money is interesting because we'll go to a November 22nd, 2016 article, and this is by the CBC. Again, go back to our past episodes when we talked about the state media run by the Canadian government. But nonetheless, I'll read this fascinating article. CBC News, Trudeau defends fundraiser with Chinese businessman who later donated $200,000 to his father's foundation. Trudeau insists that he and his ministers are following fundraising rules to the letter. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was forced to defend his party's fundraising methods in the House of Commons Tuesday after media reports emerged revealing he attended a fundraiser with a Chinese businessman who went on to donate $200,000 to the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation. The Prime Minister was the star attraction at this exclusive Cash for Access event with Chinese billionaires, said Tory MP Blaine Calkins during Tuesday's question period. Zhang Bing is a political advisor to the Chinese government, and after attending the event, he and his partner donated $1 million, including $500,000 to build a statue of the former Prime Minister. We know the Prime Minister's love for the Chinese dictatorship, So what exactly did he promise the Chinese for their $1 million donation? Trudeau accepted foreign money, but he does not want truckers. He does not want people that don't accept his views to accept foreign money. Only the Liberals can accept foreign money. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about the right to protest. How does Justin Trudeau feel about your right to peacefully protest? Because call it a blockade or call it a sit-in, it's the same thing. It's a peaceful protest of people sitting down and not moving. It's the same thing that the hippies used to do across college campuses in the 60s. It's the same thing that Gandhi used to do. Peaceful sit-in protest. So how does Justin Trudeau feel about your right to protest?
The consequences are becoming more and more severe. You don't want to end up losing your license, end up with a criminal record, which will impact your job, your livelihood, even your ability to travel internationally, including to the US. We've heard your frustration with COVID, with the measures that are there to keep people safe. We've heard you. It's time to go home now.
So it's time to go home now. You've had your little temper tantrum and it's time to go home. Well, how does Justin Trudeau feel about other countries protesting? This is a particular article taken from IndianExpress.com. Now, this particular article was written December 1st, 2020, titled, Canada's Justin Trudeau backs farmers' protests. India says remarks are ill-informed. Let me remind you, Canada will always be there to defend the rights of peaceful protesters. We believe in the process of dialogue. We've reached out through multiple means to the Indian authorities to highlight our concerns. This is a moment for all of us to pull together, Justin Trudeau said. Now, to go back, here's some highlights to talk about. We believe in the process of dialogue. If you believe in the process of dialogue, why was there no dialogue with any of the truckers in Ottawa or across the country? Not a single invite to open dialogue was offered. Not an open dialogue to talk about with the other parties. No other parties had access to talk to Justin Trudeau about this. There were Conservative members of Parliament walking around the streets of Ottawa to listen to the voices, to listen to the protesters that were there. But Justin Trudeau believes in the process of dialogue so long as they agree with Justin Trudeau. And it's amazing to see that the Prime Minister of Canada has such a short-lived memory. That he will meddle in other countries' affairs, but he does not want other countries to comment or meddle in his own affairs. The great unifier, Justin Trudeau, was to bring together Canada and Canadians. And all he has done is divide this country and fracture the country to lead to the largest protest in Canadian history. Now we're going to jump to Premier Doug Ford, everyone's favorite premier. And it's a conversation that he had shortly after the trucker protest. And what did Doug Ford have to say about the vaccine passports? And if you're not aware, Ontario is currently under a vaccine passport. If you are not up to date with your vaccines, you are not allowed entry into gyms, you're not allowed entry into movie theaters, you're not allowed entry into hospitals, you're not allowed entry into rec centers, you're not allowed to participate in sports. You are, in fact, a castaway. You are not allowed to participate in any public gathering. And what does Doug Ford have to say about his plan and his idea of bringing in the passports to begin with? And let's hear from Doug Ford in his own words.
You know, you can go to Costco, you can go to Walmart, you can go shopping. You know, you don't know if the person has a shot beside you or not, but we also know that it doesn't matter if you have one shot or 10 shots, you can catch COVID. See, the Prime Minister has triple shots, and I know hundreds of people with 3 shots that caught COVID. We just have to be careful. We've got to always make sure we wash our hands and move forward. But, Colin, we can't stay in this position forever. We got to learn to live with this and get on with our lives. I bet if I asked every single person in this room, do you want these damn masks or do you want them off? They want them off. They want to get back to normal. They want to be able to go for dinner with their families. And there's every single person, including myself, knows people that are unvaccinated. You know, sure, there's the rebel rousers, and then there's just hardworking people that just don't believe in it. And that's their choice. This is about, again, a democracy and freedoms and liberties. And I hate, as a government, telling anyone what to do. We just got to get moving forward and get out of this and protect the jobs. You know, I think a lot of people, Colin, probably yourself too, everyone's done with us. Like, we are done with it. Let's start moving on and cautiously. And, you know, we've followed the rules, all of us, like 90% of us, for over 2 years. The world's done with it. So let's just move forward.
Now, while Doug Ford's plans originally back in November of 2021 was to end the vaccine passports for March 1st, will his turn or change of events lead him to scrapping more of the health bylaws, restricting the control of these health officials, these unelected bureaucrats making the rules? Will he not take their advice in the future? And will some of these restrictions just disappear on March 1st? Time will tell. But it has been 2 years for 2 weeks to crush the curve. 2 years of mandates. And it's only taken a group of truckers to recently fracture some premiers. And looking at Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, who have all since dropped their vaccine passports and have turning to life as we know it, those are the 3 provinces that are likely to form a Western coalition to leave Canada as separatist movements continue to grow and the sentiment of leaving Canada behind and to unite those prairie provinces. The one issue that they would have would be they're landlocked. They wouldn't have access to ship out oil. The only oil that they would be able to export would be down to the United States. And we know how beneficial that could be for Alberta. But will this trucker movement continue to change people? Now, Doug Ford said that there was rebel rousers, and then there was just people that just don't want to get the vaccine. Now, it's interesting that Doug Ford would notice that there was people that are rebel rousers, and there's people that just are hardworking Canadians that don't want the vaccine. I will play one clip from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about people that do not want to get a vaccine. Now, this clip is in French, but we will summarize what he does say in English after the clip.
On va s'en sortir de cette pandémie par la vaccination. Puis on connaît tous des gens qui sont en train d'hésiter un petit peu. On va continuer d'essayer de les convaincre. Mais il y a aussi des gens qui sont farouchement opposés à la vaccination. Qui sont extrémistes. Qui ne croient pas dans la science, qui sont souvent misogynes, souvent racistes aussi. C'est un petit groupe, mais qui prend de la place. Et là, il faut faire un choix en tant que leader, en tant que pays. Est-ce qu'on tolère ces gens-là ou est-ce qu'on dit, voyons, la plupart des gens, presque 80% des Québécois ont fait ce qu'il fallait faire, se sont fait vacciner, on veut revenir aux choses qu'on aime faire, c'est pas ces gens-là qui vont nous bloquer. Maintenant, on est dans une...
Now, for those that don't speak French, here is what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said in French. We are going to end this pandemic by proceeding with the vaccination. We all know people who are deciding whether or not they are willing to get vaccinated, and we will do our very best to try to convince them. However, there is still a part of the population that is fiercely against it. They don't believe in science, progress, are real and are very often misogynistic and racist. It's a very small group of people, but that doesn't shy away from the fact that they take up some space. This leads us, as a leader and as a country, to make a choice. Do we tolerate these people? Over 80% of the population of Quebec have done their duty by getting the shot. They are obviously not the issue in this situation. Those are the words of the Prime Minister. The same Prime Minister that said it's a small group of Canadians regarding the trucker protest. The same Prime Minister that tells you that you have unacceptable views is now saying, what do we do? Do we tolerate these people? These people. Do we tolerate these people? So, what do we do with the unvaccinated in Canada? As provinces move away from this, and move away from this type of speak, the federal government is doubling down on forcing Canadians to take a vaccine or lose your livelihood. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Fact Is. I'm your host, Hollis Grant, and I hope you have yourself a wonderful week.
Dan, what happens every Thursday?
That would be DCR Droids Canada Radio.
And what time is it on Thursday?
That's from 9 till 11 p.m.
Dumb question, where do you find it?
You find that at accessradio.ca.
And what's the best part?
It's free.